We'll begin episode 13 with a two-part story in just a minute, but first of all, let's start with the date. It's now August the 1st of 1986, so the story begins outside of Starlight Mansion. And by the way, this is part one of the story of the music awards. So upstairs, we see Chrissy brushing Bonnie's hair and standing in the mirror playing the guitar as Dondra, the Starlight Girls. As you may have guessed it, Jerrica is 20 years old and of course Kimber is 19. Of course, Dondra explained to the girls that if she practices on her guitar long enough, she'll get better at it. So anyway, downstairs in the living room, rest of the Starter girls were watching Lindsay Pierce on TV. And of course, Lindsay Pierce has some good news. She said that both of the bands have been nominated for the music awards, both the Holograms and the Misfits. Speaking of the Misfits, meanwhile, the Gabor State, after they heard on the news, that's when they realized there's a problem. Since Jerga is now in control of Starlight Music, there's no way they can attend the music awards now. That's when Rossi suggested that if they had a record company, they would do so. So, as always, Pizzazz, who follows Roxy's suggestion, went to her father, Harvey. Now remember, just 5 episodes ago, Harvey Gabor is the one that punished his daughter for ruining the World Studio. So now she has to convince him of getting the record company of her own. So she asked her father that. And of course, her father at first refused, but then readily agreed and said, do whatever you want. And so after Roxy heard from Possessed that they now have a record company, that's when they head off. So meanwhile, the Starlight Girls, along with Jerga and the rest, are shopping for clothes because for the Starlight Girls, it was time for them to get back to school. And what better way to do a shopping montage is with the song by the Holograms. She makes an impression. Meanwhile, Dondra has just showed Jerga the outfit she picked out, but of course, Jerga just brushed her off. Meanwhile, at Jerka's upstairs office at Starlight Music, along with Joy and Stewart, you remember her from episode 7. They just watched what was going on across the street, and little did they know, that's when they realized there's the music company that's right across the street from them called Misfits Music. When Joanne and Jerka saw what was going on, that's when Jerka goes downstairs to investigate. So after Jerica goes inside Misfits Music, she saw the receptionist there, and also Eric and the Misfits who were also there. The first thing Eric did was to welcome Jerica to the company. And of course, Stormer made a nice suggestion to Jerica that if she ever runs out of business, she can always work for them. That annoys Jerica. Before Jerica left Eric's upstairs office, the first thing he told her is that we'll see you at the awards ceremony when we win. Well, don't even count on it, Jerica said, and so after that she left. Meanwhile, on the rooftop of Misfits Music, this is Tech Rat, another one of Eric's right hand guys. The best thing that Tech Rat's known for are building gadgets and gizmos. But the only weakness that he has is that he doesn't like to be touched at all, except for Minx of the Stingers, but that will come later in season 3. Back with Jericho, who just left the music company belonging to the mistress, she looked over her shoulder at the billboard, and what she saw horrifies her, and she headed back to Starlight Music. So meanwhile at Starlight Mansion, that's when Synergy was telling Jerica that she and the girls need to see her right away. So they go to the room where Synergy is. It was right after again Jerica brushes off Dondra, the Starlight Girls, and along with Bonnie and Chrissy. Later, back with Eric, he meets up with Techrat in the parking garage, and then of course Techrat has an idea to use a jammer, and he knows just the place to test it out. That's before they got into the car, and after that, that's when Techrat was introduced by the mistress after Pizzazz told Eric that they didn't want to miss out all the fun, so everyone left the parking garage. Back at Starlight Mansion with the holograms and Synergy, the first thing that Jerica did was to ask Synergy what can she and the holograms do to beat the Misfits. Kimber goes first to speak in her case to tell Jerica not to worry about it. Then Aja goes next to speak in her case to say we can still win that award no matter what. Then it's Shayna's turn, who agrees with Aja to say that it's the music that speaks for itself and nothing else. Jericho, who agrees with Shan, says you're right, but what we need are more synergy holograms that can help us out. Jericho also suggested that they needed the light show as part of the act. So Jericho was asking Synergy, can you do it? Can you pull it off? So Synergy agrees to do just that, but then all of a sudden, what Jericho and her friends didn't know is that outside of Starlight Mansion, Eric's car shows up along with Tegrat, the Misfits, and of course Eric himself. So Eric agrees to let Tegrat do his thing, and so he did. So when Techrat activated his jammer, every electronic in, of course, the Starlight Mansion itself started going wacko, including Synergy. Luckily for Jerka and her friends in the same room where Jerka is, they all got down on the floor. Back in Eric's car with the Misfits and of course Techrat and Eric himself, that's when Possessive seems delighted with Techrat's gadget and she said, "Here, let me try it." And that's when both Techrat and Possessed were having a fight in the back of the car. Back with Jerrica in the room where Synergy is, and along with her friends, she tried desperately to turn off Synergy before it does any more damage. Back with Techrat and Possess, who were in the back of Eric's car, continuing to having a fight. That was until, at long last, the gadget of Techrat's broke when it went outside the window and landed on the ground. After Techrat's gadget broke, everything in the Starlight Mansion went back to normal, including Synergy, so I guess Jerga doesn't need to shut her off after all. So even though Kimber complimented to Jerga that she did it, she got Synergy back to normal, but Jerga says she never did anything. Back with Techrat and Possess, as you can see, Techrat's upset because now, thanks to Possess, his black box gadget is broken, and he told her that it was her fault that she broke it. So Possess wants to know from Eric, where did you get this weirdo anyway? Well, he's not exactly a weirdo in a way, Eric said. He's a genius, that's all. So minutes later, Eric's car left the Starlight Mansion. So back with the holograms and Synergy at Starlight Mansion, that's when Synergy explains that it wasn't a malfunction, it was something else. Whatever's going on that causes the electronics to go out of control. But Jericho told everyone the good news. Now that everything's back to normal, everything is fine. So after Jericho pleaded her case that she hopes that nothing will happen again, and that's when Kimber had reminded Jericho of something. So we know what this means. Kimber just told Jericho that they were supposed to meet up with their friend Video. Back with Layla and the rest of the Starlight Girls, that's when they started, however, in a panic, saying that everything just went all weird all of a sudden. Before Jericho left, she told the girls that everything's okay now, don't worry about it. And so she got into their iconic vehicle, the Rockin' Roadster, and that's when Dondra, Chrissy, and Bonnie tries to tell Jericho about something important. But for the third time, Jericho just brushed off Dondra and says, "We're late already. We gotta go." And so after that, they left. And now Dondra's starting to complain to both Chrissy and Bonnie how Jericho is always busy and never spends time with them anymore. So the holograms had arrived at the Raven house. So meanwhile, there, the holograms met up with Rio and Video. So by the time that everyone made it to the next room, that's when they saw a woman dancing along to the hologram song "It's Only Me and the Music." This is Giselle Gavrak, aka Dance, and she does her dance routine. After the song ended, the holograms along with Jerica and Rio met up with Dance, and that's when Dance explains that she's a volunteer at the Raven House Foundation. It's an organization that helps runaway teens. But now, here comes a problem, because Dance explains that lately the Raven House is running out of money. That means they couldn't afford for teens to have a proper home. So Jim, now turning from Jericho, wants to know from Dance what can she and the Hawkins do to help. Luckily for Dance, she came up with a suggestion, a benefit concert. She said it's the only way to raise the Raven House funds. So after Jim and the Hawkins thought about it, they agreed to help Dance and to help out with a benefit concert. So after Jim and her friends and Rio left the Raven House, it was back at Starlight Mansion. That's when Jim and Rio are discussing what to do to set up for the benefit concert, and that's when Rio and Jim had an argument with each other. And then suddenly there was a knock on the door. It's Dondra along with Bonnie and Christy, and that's when they saw Jim. And when Dondra tried to get Jim's attention, but just like what Jerica did, she brushes her away. After Chrissy, Dondra, and Bonnie left the room, Rio apologized to Jim, and of course Jim forgives him. Back with Dondra, who was upstairs in her room after tearing up all the Jim's posters and everything else, that's when she decided that that was the last straw. And so when she told Chrissy and Bonnie that she made up her mind, she decided to run away. Anyway, even though Bonnie and Chrissy say that they do care about Dondra, But in her case, Jim and Jerica doesn't care. Then Bonnie, who was 8 years old, thought that since Dondra's not going alone, she decided to go along with her, and so did Chrissy. And that's when Chrissy suggests to leave a note for Jerica to let her know what happened. And so after that, all three of the girls left the mansion. So meanwhile, at the suburban house, this is Daddy, and he just got thrown out of the house by his own father by telling him, "I don't ever want to see you again," and then shuts the door in front of Danny as he lays on the ground. Meanwhile, at Jerica's upstairs office at Starlight Music, that's when she had a discussion with Video and Dance. After Jerica told Dance that Jim has told her all about her, and that's when Dance told her the good news that she just printed out the playbill for the benefit concert, which is August the 3rd, in the next couple days. After Jerica steps out of the office for a while, she changes to Jim, and at the same time, she projects Jerica. Back with the Starlight Girls who just left the mansion, they had just arrived in the underground parking garage of Misfits Music. Meanwhile, back at Jerica's upstairs office at Starlight Music, that's when Jim had a discussion with Lindsay, Dance, and Video. And when Lindsay asked Jim if the awards ceremonies people was going to be aware that Jim's not going to be coming that day because the awards is on the same night as the benefit concert, Jim is in a serious situation. And she realized that said, "Oh my goodness, I didn't know." After she realized that both the benefit concert and the awards ceremony was that same night, she regretfully apologized to Dance, and then Dance forgives her. Back at Mrs. Music's garage with the three girls, that's when the mistress showed up and recognized that they are the Starlight Girls. And when Possess asked if they knew where they were, that's when Dondra told her no. So after Possess is whooping more than happy to help, that's when the girls aboard the truck. And that's when in the office, Possess made a phone call with Jack with the CPS to investigate Jerica. Back at Starlight Mansion, Jerica received a note from Chrissy, Bonnie, and Dondra stating that they're running away because she just learned that from Ashley. So long story short, after looking everywhere and had no such luck and went back to the mansion, that's when Jerica realized that she made a terrible mistake and that she should have paid attention more than what she should. So when the holograms arrived at the Raven House after Jerica followed Kimber's advice, it's August the 2nd of 1986. That's when again Jim apologized and then asked Dance should they still need the band for the benefit concert, and so Dance agrees. Back with Danny, who had just arrived at the stadium, he accidentally bumped into Mick, who was selling concert tickets for the Misfits. So the Misfits concert went on as planned later on that night with the Misfits song "I Am a Giant," and that's when the Starlight Girls saw Danny climbing up the scaffolding and figured if he can do it, so should they. But then Chrissy realized she's afraid of heights and starts to fall off. Things look bad for Chrissy at the Starlight Girls, and so that ends episode 13 and part 1.